What's up? What's happening? Welcome to episode 4 of Pimp My Bike. In this episode, we're not swapping anything out. We're looking at small changes that make big differences to your bike. And the first thing we're talking about is a cockpit. So let's get the bike off the stand and get it set up. The first adjustment that I'm going to mention is stem length. That's just altering this piece here to make it longer or shorter. I've gone for a 55mm stem right here. It's perfect for trail riding, puts me in a comfortable position for climbing, and an aggressive one for descending. If you have a longer one, it's going to be better for climbing. Shorter one, you're going to get more control in the descents. You can also change the bar width. These are stock 800mm. I like a wide bar. I've got long arms and I feel really comfortable on them. You can shorten them depending on the trails that you're riding. If you're riding tight trees, you might want to have narrower bars. And then the final one is bar roll, but we're going to get onto that in just a second once I've grabbed a 4mm Allen key. So to adjust the bar roll, it's really easy. You're just going to loosen off those 4 stem cap bolts. There we go, that's them. And this is the movement of the bar roll. So you've got forwards, you've got backwards. I really like to have it in a neutral position. That's where it feels comfortable for me. Having it a little bit further forward, that's going to pull your weight over the front a bit more. It's great for climbing. Having it rolled back, it's going to be easier to get over the back of the bike in that position. I'm just going to roll it back and forth until I feel really happy with it. I feel comfortable with how it is feeling. Just about there. Check that it's even on both sides using these lines right here. That's looking pretty good. And then we're going to tighten it up using a 4mm Allen key, and then we'll get the torque wrench and tighten it up correctly to 5 Newton meters. So now that we've got the bar roll set up, we're feeling comfortable with that. I'm going to move on to setting up my brake lever angle. Brake lever angle is pretty important to me. I find that if I have them too low, I'm putting a lot of pressure on my wrist and my forearm, and I build up arm pump. Too high, I just don't feel at one with the bike. So it's finding that kind of nice level. I kind of try to think of drawing like a line right through from my finger all the way through my elbow and my shoulder. Let's go ahead and adjust that. It's really easy. Again, my 4mm Allen key, gonna take that, loosen off, and then just move it into position where I feel comfortable. It might take a few times. Got that there, and then I just want to check that this finger here is actually catching that little curve right there. I'm only using one finger for braking, giving maximum power. That feels just about right, so let's tighten that up. Check again, comfortable. Yep, that's feeling good. And then we can move on to the other brake. Loosen it off, and then just adjust until you're comfortable with it. About there, feels pretty good. That feels nice. Both sides feel pretty natural and in good position. So I'll tighten that back up. Happy with that. And then the only other option that we have to adjust on the cockpit is that I can move the shifter. I don't want to be catching my thumb on it because it's going to rub away and it could chafe, but I want to be really easily grabbing it when I need some gears, so we can just adjust that laterally and also angularly. On the seat, there's a number of adjustments that you can do. The first being you can move it back and forth. This is really for climbing to get dialed in. And the second, you can actually tilt it downwards or you can tilt it upwards. By tilting it upwards, the rear of the saddle is going to be closer to the tire. It's going to be easier to shift your weight over the back of the bike. By tilting the front of it downwards, you're going to be in a better position for climbing. I've gone for something really neutral here. I've gone for it because I'm going to be climbing on it. I'm also going to be descending on the bike, and it's easy enough to slide backwards and get enough room for those steeper tracks. An adjustment that you can do on pedals, especially if you're riding Shimano clip pedals, is you can change the actual spring tension. It's really easy to do. By adding it on, it's going to be harder to clip out. By taking it off, it's going to be easier. It's a great tool, especially if you're new to riding SPDs. By making it easier to unclip, it's going to give you a little bit more confidence and make that transition from flat to clip pedals easier. If you're riding flat pedals, you can also change the height of the pins to give you more or less traction. Tire pressure. I mentioned that in episode 3. It's something that I'll check pretty much before every single ride. I know then that I've just got the bike dialed and I'm really happy with it. It also tends to mean that if I've got it right, I'm less likely to get a puncture. 20 psi, spot on. That is ready to hit the trails. Let's check the rear, and if that's at 24, we're good to go. My tire pressures over the years have become trialed and tested. Go 20 psi in the front, 24 psi in the rear. The reason that I do that is it's a compromise between grip and getting a puncture. I don't want to get a puncture. I want as much grip as I can. I've experimented with lower and higher, and this just seems to be the perfect setup for me. So get one of these, pressure gauge. They're relatively cheap and they can make a massive difference to your actual ride quality. Experiment a little bit here and there, find like a baseline, and then you can take away some, you can add some depending on the conditions. If it's rough, fast, you're gonna want to add some, especially to the rear so you don't do any damage to your rim. If it's sort of slower, softer, or muddier, you might want to take some pressure out, and that'll give you more grip and roots and rocks. That's one of the biggest differences that I've made, and something that as a pro rider, you check before pretty much every ride, definitely before every race. The last thing that I want to talk about is suspension setup. You want to set up your sag correctly, and also your compression and rebound. A great starting point for getting settings is manufacturer's guidelines. And in episode 1 of Pimp My Bike, I talked a little bit more about how I go into getting it set up and dialed in for the trails that I'm riding and my style. So please go and check that out. But for now, before we hit the trails, I'm gonna do a full bolt check and get that chain lubed up. This episode is all about getting your bike set up perfectly and feeling comfortable on the trail. And coming down these techie sections where there's big rock features, I feel really good on the bike. It feels balanced, the suspension's doing what it's meant to be doing, the cockpit feels really dialed in, I'm comfortable with everything and get to my brakes really easily. I know that I'm going to have to slow down, and that's helping me down those sections, giving me confidence. The trails today, they are running really nicely. We're going to continue on this ride. Little climb up here, and then there's some more techie sections. What a day out riding. The trails have been fantastic. The bike is feeling absolutely dialed. I feel so comfortable on it. It's so capable for being 130 millimeters up front, 120 in the rear, having a blast on it. In the final episode, we're going to do a bike check and talk about the changes that we've made, how they've affected the riding. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. If you've got any comments, questions, leave them down below, and don't forget to give this video a thumb up like. Thanks for watching, guys.